For those who don't know Cincinnati, we have Lower Price Hill, where you are now, and we have Price Hill, which is just up that hill right there. And so Daniel Hughes is pastor of United Methodist Incline Missional Community there, and he'll be our next speaker. Daniel.
So, we've heard some personal testimonies, and I can speak to this personally, but I want to talk about this issue and why I'm supporting issue 1 from kind of a jobs perspective, my profession, if you will. As David said, I live in Price Hill. It's considered East Price Hill. I live in the parsonage, which is right beside the church. And I live in a community very similar to this that's been devastated by the opioid crisis. We have all types of people who are struggling to make it in life. We would consider some of them poor, some of those vulnerable people, some who have not really had a chance in life in the first place. And I see them on my porch. I see them in my church in the pews. We've called the ambulance to pick up dead bodies. We have called the ambulance to administer Narcan. We've had the Narcan training. We work with the police department. We do National Night Out. And we see that everyone is overwhelmed by this crisis that we have, this epidemic that we have. And I know from a law and order perspective, I know that our judges and our law enforcement see this from their perspective. But the people, there is no way as a pastor who lives in that kind of a neighborhood, do I want to see people who are going to harm my neighborhood back in the neighborhood. I'm seeing them already, and I want our neighborhoods to be healthy and safe, and they're not healthy and safe because when these young men and women are pulled out and locked up, I'm left there ministering to their children and their wives or girlfriends or whatever else is left. And how do you explain to these little babies that, daddy has issues and he has problems, but really daddy's poor and we just made daddy a criminal because he's poor. Daddy can't take care of his kids. Daddy is suffering from trauma, and we're not dealing with the trauma and the real life situations that people are living. So for me, this thing it's hard work. I understand that the judges don't want to fill up their dockets. But at the end of the day, you get to go back to your neighborhoods wherever you live, and you're not seeing Jimmy on the corner. You're not seeing Ron on the corner. You're not seeing Sheila on the corner. I see all of them, and I want my neighborhood that I work in, that I live in, that I serve in, to be safe and healthy. And I believe that issue 1 will be one step in that direction. Every Thursday, I go into the Justice Center, and I get to work with young men. And I get to talk with the young men about my faith, Jesus, and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and how I believe that they deserve a second chance, and how life can be different. But it strikes me, and I feel like a hypocrite, because I know that even once they get out, in the pod that I'm working in, they all have substance abuse issues. When they get out, our neighborhoods and our communities and our economy will not accept them, will not invite them back. And it's like, how much do they have to pay for the mistakes that they've made? They've already done the time, but then when they get out, they can't get a job, they can't get housing, they can't stay with their girls who might have assistance. The whole system is broken, and this is what I believe. I truly believe that God has called us, Methodists, Episcopalians, Catholics, Protestants, people of faith, to step up and be leaders in such a time as this. It is time for leadership. We understand that our communities have been crushed. We understand that our families have deteriorated, and those are no longer excuses. We have to do things differently. It's going to require bold leadership, doing things, working with people we don't normally work with, loving on people we've never really wanted to love, being in communities and in places that we never felt that we should have been there in the first place, but God has called us for such a time as this. We in here in the room, we stand for issue 1, and I stand for issue 1 I want to read this, and I want to end with this for Jonathan. Jonathan is a guy who, for me, this is what makes the work that I do come together. Jonathan is a guy who was in the reentry pod, and he wrote me this letter. I just got it this week, and it really just touched my heart, and so hopefully it'll touch yours. He says, I'm trying to get back to the pod that you were in because they took me out. He said, but I've never really been religious, but I'm spiritual. He's like, I study Eastern philosophy a lot, Buddhism and Taoism. I actually used to always have hatred and negative feelings toward Christianity. But I decided to use the Buddhist, Taoist open-mindedness to be receptive to Jesus and the Christian concepts. I see it as I see it as nothing but good, positive spiritual vibes, and they don't contradict my spiritual beliefs. The way that you opened up, and I opened up this time with something that we received from John Wesley. How is it with your soul? So when I go into the jail, I said, soul check time. How is it with your soul? He said, when you opened up with that, it said something to me again. And he says, and it doesn't really matter if you're religious or not. It felt like I was home. It hit home with me. And he said, I started to get my inner smile back. He said, I was just getting clean, a week off of heroin, and my light was going out, and it just started to come back again. That pod and that environment is better than anywhere else. He says, I really do need a lot of resources that they offer, but I'm not in that pod any longer. My mom's helping. He says, but here's the deal. That's what got me. He says, I'm looking for some direction before I get out. He says, honestly, I'm scared to death of getting out and letting myself and my family down. I don't think that I'm ready or strong enough yet. There are plenty of stories just like this, men and women who are locked up because of these low-level drug offenses who want to do better. They don't know the resources. They don't have the help. They need us as good people of faith to go in and fight for them, to serve them, to love them, to be with them, and to get this issue passed so that we can divert this money from criminalizing poor to treating those who have been traumatized. Amen.